Good morning, everyone, and Uncle Ross. First of all, I want to wish all of you a wonderful holiday season, and I pray Godspeed for each and every one of your lives, and I hope that you enjoy your families during the break. Apologize for this meeting being on this particular day, but there were some things that came up that we had to reschedule. But I guarantee we won't hold you long unless you want to be here long. It's entirely up to you. At this point in time, Mr. Ross, how you doing today, sir?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. At this point in time, we have public comment, so we're going to ask that would take place at this point. Public comment is by...
We do have one Mary. Oh, it's Bowens.
Yes. Very good. Thank
I've
you.
been practicing.
I wanted to come up and talk about evaluations today. There was a presentation at the last meeting, and since public comment comes before the meeting, I had to wait till this one to come and speak about it. I always give this disclaimer when I speak, because I want people to realize that what I hear in my office and the calls that I get are usually from the people who are having difficulties or have some problems. So I try to make sure I know that that's not all that's happening out there. Nobody ever calls me and says, my principal's a dream, my kids are perfect, I've got everything I need. I don't get those calls. So, but I do want to start with a quote from Charlotte Danielson. And she said, "I am deeply troubled by the transformation of teaching from a complex profession requiring nuanced judgment to be the performance of certain behaviors that can be ticked off on a checklist." When observers enter a classroom with this checklist, it contains 4 levels of 57 different visible behaviors that need to be displayed to the evaluator during a 45-minute observation. It's also fairly impossible, in my opinion, to take out the subjectivity from those observations. Teachers who have been effective or highly effective for years can become minimally effective with a change in administrators, classrooms, subject areas, or also personality clashes. In our system, we also have 10% of our final evaluation score based on a student opinion survey called the Tripod. Scores have come out for the fall survey, and teachers are looking for professional development to support them in the areas that they find themselves low in. And I don't believe there's anything in the professional development department to support the teachers in those areas they find. So to me, the question is, what do teachers need to become more proficient in their teaching? So I wanted to get to the things that I think it should look like.
Okay.
One is, I think, that the observers and the staff need to be trained together in whatever tool is used. I want to make sure that the focus remains on the teacher effectiveness and the student growth. But I think if evaluators and teachers are trained at the same time, we all hear the same thing, and they've eliminated a lot of the guesswork of what is happening during an observation. I think that the evaluation should be more collaborative between the evaluators and the staff. I think that, and I shouldn't use staff because I mean this needs to be more individualized, so that there should be an identifying chance to look at what the individual teacher needs. Then the evaluator and the teacher would work together to analyze the evidence in that area of need. Then they would engage and study and learn together for those skills, and then analyze the work and see how it impacts the students. When you individualize the needs of the teachers, there's a real difference between what a new hire needs, who's just starting in the profession, versus what a 30-year veteran needs. That's why the individualization comes into play. Evaluators need to be able to guide teachers from where they are to where they need to be. Kind of sounds like a classroom. I think...
You have about 30 seconds.
Okay. The focus needs to remain on student behaviors. Are they learning, and what do those things look like? Not just what the teacher's doing, but what are the students doing? I think there needs to be more input from teachers at all levels. Ask the teachers, what do you need? How can we support you? What resources do you need? And how can we do a better job of educating students? None of this comes from a checklist with 230 behaviors on it. And the importance always comes down to the fact that employment decisions are based on the current model that we use. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Instructional council update.
Thank you.
Good morning, Pastor Moody.
Good morning.
Matias, Mr. Ross, and Dr. Falb. My name is Pat Reagan. This year, I am the chairperson of the Instructional Council for the school year 2016-17. I'm here to give you just a brief update about where the council is at this point in the school year. And not to reread all of the minutes that I know that you, or the report that you have in front of you, but our first meeting was on Thursday, the 17th of November, from 1 to 3 at GRPS University. It was a meeting where we introduced new members and had a conversation with returning members. We reviewed the purpose of the Instructional Council by taking a look at the Article 7 Joint Councils and Committees section of the teacher contract. We reviewed processes, timelines, communication, and took a look at the currently approved GRPS syllabus template that teachers and administrators use to propose new courses. We considered the formation of subcommittees, and we still have that under review. We took a look at the curriculum guide and what needs to be updated during this school year if we move to approving new courses. And then we also reviewed the timeline for reporting to the Academic Achievement Committee of the board. And the members were very interested as to how the committee views their work. We all agreed that it's important to clarify timelines and processes for developing and presenting new proposed courses. In particular, at this time, many of the things that we are proposing are very unique and very new based on the rigor in our school system and the needs of our students. And that the next thing we did deal with was a clear communication to the system about how courses are developed and how teachers can actually take advantage of all of the supports necessary to bring a course forward to the Instructional Council. These minutes were for a previously scheduled Academic Achievement Committee, so it does note to you that there will be a meeting on December 15th. Of course, there was, and we reviewed a new course. It's a newcomers high school integrated science course to meet the needs of our newcomer students who are exiting newcomers after their full year in newcomers. It'll be their first semester out. There's additional work that Jonathan Harper will be doing with the multiple people who are supporting this course at Union High School. So we will have a complete update on that syllabus and have that for you at the next Academic Achievement Committee meeting.
Thank you. May I ask one question?
Sure.
What type of science course?
Integrated science. And I think Jonathan might be able to, I am not a science teacher and I would not want to say exactly what it covers or doesn't cover myself.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah,
When I spoke with Mr. Nelson at Union High School and Halima Ismail and Dr. Gunnell, we talked about the needs of newcomer students that are exiting the program. And one of the goals with having an integrated science program for the exiting newcomers is to help give them jump start on their required grad credits that they'll need when they actually graduate from high school. The course is designed it's aligned to the new Michigan Science Standards, which are the next generation science standards, to give them an introduction mostly to some of the key foundational components for life science and physical science primarily. The initial course is semester 1, and then the intent is to have a second semester of this as well, so that they can actually earn one of their 3 1.0 grad credits, and in a way that is going to prepare them for the required science courses, for instance, biology, and then they also have to have a chemistry and physics. The intent of this first course is to help them make sure that help the students make sure that they have all of the intro skills in the different content areas, so they can be successful on the other courses as well.
So biology,
Yeah, so
integrated into the science
the
program,
graduation
all the science
requirements for high school is they require 1 year of biology, and then it has to be chemistry or physics, and then a 3rd year of science. And the 3rd year of science can be any science. And the intent with this integrated science for newcomers is that it actually provides that 3rd year credit, but will give them the foundational information and knowledge that they need, and so that they can be successful in those required courses, which would be biology and then chemistry or physics, depending on how the schedule works out.
Go ahead. I suspect that they're still struggling in English.
Yes.
Correct? So how are you helping them after that first year of initial transition from either Spanish or English or whatever language, then now they're thrown into, I shouldn't say thrown into, but then they're given mainstream, is that a fair word to use? Mainstreamed into the student body, and then are taking an integrated science, right?
This course is specifically designed for them, so that it's also going to be offered through sheltered instruction. And we are looking for content science teachers or a science teacher that's ESL endorsed.
Okay, and then what other help comes along them? So do they
we
get
also-
tutors? How are you pairing that? Or
The newcomers program, we have at Union High School, we have tutors in different languages. That help the students along with their teachers, the ESL certified teachers.
so is the course already in effect, or is it going to take effect in
The course
new
will
year?
take effect in January. And this is specifically designed to differentiate and help those students along, because we know that at this point, it would be difficult for them to take biology.
I just want to applaud the conception and the implementation of a course like this, because I can only imagine if a lot of these students don't have classroom experience, let alone introduction to methodologies.
Right.
And bridging the academic language of science must be exceptionally challenging when you don't speak the native language, when it would be challenging for a native speaker often for some of the concepts in language. So I really applaud you guys for recognizing the need for this and creating this course. I'll be eager to see what the barriers are and what the successes are.
Thank you, and I want to remind also all of us is that many times the reason why they go to newcomers is not only that they do not know English, but they have limited schooling
Right.
from their country or interrupted schooling. So this would not be a traditional student that would come to this country with a transcript already, being schooled. So this is a different type of student, and this is why we tailor our instruction to that student, to those students.
I think although, specifics around scientific methodology need to be taught, we internalize a lot of that methodology just being in our culture. So it's like the gap must be very large to even uncover what that gap is. You know, if you're an educator of native-born students, you don't even experience that gap. So it's a needed course. So it's awesome that you're doing it.
I agree, but I also think it's important, just the way you explained it, Dr. Gonto. I would not have thought about it in those terms. When you talk about foreign students not having certain classrooms experience, I think it's important that that's told to us up front, so it gives us a better understanding as to what this class is about. Because when you say integrated, you know, I want to know what type of science are we talking about? You know, we're talking biology, chemistry, microbiology, but now you made a little bit more clarity to it because we're talking about students who have not had classroom experience and are coming from other places outside the United States. So that's very important. I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dr. DeBoer.
Good morning.
Morning. We're good again.
Good. It's our pleasure to present to you the program evaluation report for English language learners for the program for the school year 2015-16, as we always do. So I'm going to let Dr. DeBoer begin, and I think you have the summary, you have the executive summary and the whole report.
So I'll be speaking from the executive summary and hitting a few of the highlights in there, and then Dr. Gollum, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about either the evaluation or the program in general. So the first thing I want to do before I get into the findings is pull out a couple of pieces from the introduction section on page 1. As you board members know, the vast majority of our English language learners are native Spanish speakers. That is, that's the first language that they learned. Right now, that proportion is about 81%. But we've had, over the years, we've had a large number of students come to our district from foreign countries. Immigrants come to West Michigan for a variety of reasons, but they come in particular because of the churches in West Michigan who are part of the immigrant and refugee settlement programs. So going back to when I first started working for the district in the 1970s, the Vietnam War, we had a large number of students come to our district from Vietnam and Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. And then when wars broke out in Eastern Europe, we had an influx of immigrant students from such countries as Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Serbia, and Montenegro, and Slovenia. And then in more recent years, as a result of famine, war, and terrorism, the district has enrolled a large number of students from countries such as Syria, Iraq, Rwanda, Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, the Sudan, Ethiopia, and the Congo. So for many years, Vietnamese was the second most frequent language spoken by our English language learners, and it's now Kinyarwanda, which is the native language of most residents of Rwanda. And that represents now 3% of our English language learners. That leaves 16% of our English language learners, and they speak a host of other languages. So right now, in total, we've got 42 non-English languages represented by our students. Now, to make the most efficient use of our instructional resources, you know that our district employs or designates 16 schools as what we call cultural centers. So they are particularly staffed and resourced to meet the needs of our English language learners. We have elementary and secondary cultural centers. The students who enroll there are students from their attendance area, and those students who test low with the WIDA APT, which is the initial screener. So we will recommend to parents that their children attend there. Parents can decide for a variety of reasons that they don't want to be transported across the district to a language center or cultural center, and they can choose to attend their neighborhood school, and that's perfectly fine. The point being that we are required by the Office of Civil Rights and by the Michigan Department of Education to meet the needs of all of our English language learners, no matter what school they attend. So it's a unique challenge for our district. It has been for many years. How do we provide appropriate services for students attending non-cultural centers? So we continue to try to address that through capacity building and professional development and additional resources. So by way of that introduction, I'll then take you to some of the key findings, and those are in the executive summary on page 5. So in the area of program strengths, over the last 20 years, our district has been very successful in increasing the number of teachers who who have bilingual or ESL certification, as well as those who might have a permanent status and therefore are working toward a bilingual or ESL certification. This past school year, we had 113 teachers who had such certifications. And those districts of those teachers were specifically designated to provide language services for students. And while we have concentrated those staffing assets at the 16 cultural centers, there are many other credentialed teachers, actually 44, who serve in non-cultural centers as well. So they may not be specifically assigned to provide language needs of students, but they undoubtedly use their second language ability and their credentials to meet the needs of English language learners who happen to be in their classroom. Secondly, of the 3,062 students who were tested with the WIDA Access in spring of 2015 and also in spring of 2016, about half of them, 49%, improved at least one level of language proficiency, and 34% maintained the same level that they had the previous year. 17% of those students regressed one or more levels. Typically, it's one level. Third, the average conditional growth index scores of English language learners exceeded the district average, this is on the MAP test, by a considerable margin in math. Average CGI scores converted to percentiles provide greater context for how that growth compares to a national norm. English language learners, students attending cultural centers, averaged exceptional math growth. That math growth put them at the 60th percentile compared to the growth of typical students nationwide. Stocking average math growth, for example, at the 75th percentile, and Sibley at the 74th percentile. Finally, as an area of program strength, especially in grades K through 6, ELL students were much more likely to have satisfactory absentee levels than non-ELL students. This was also true in grades 9 through 12, but to a somewhat lesser degree. One area of concern, several cultural centers averaged negative CGI growth in reading. These were particularly notable at Burton Elementary, Cesar Chavez, and Westwood. Students at cultural centers averaged fall to spring reading growth 0. That was slightly less than that of ELL students at non-cultural centers. 0 meaning in the CGI world that their growth was typical compared to the national norm. So that's not necessarily negative, it just means that their growth was about what we expected. But anything in the negative territory means that they actually lost ground from fall to spring. And given that these students already start out as a deficit, which is one of the requirements for being in the program, we want to make sure they don't fall further behind. So the recommendation from that concern is that the ELL department should meet with the staff at Burton Elementary, Cesar Chavez, and Westwood Middle to understand why their growth scores in reading lag behind those of English language learners at other cultural centers. This work should include a study of their model, their staffing, resources, and needs for professional development. And I can tell you that those meetings have already been scheduled. That will take place right after the break. And Dr. O'Connell and I will both be attending those. So with that, any questions you have about either the evaluation or the program in general?
Just a little education, relatively quick one. I can look up further, but ESL certified. I know that doesn't mean an instructor is bilingual. I know that some may be bilingual, but as far as ESL certified, I guess what's the highlight of some of that is from a teaching perspective? I mean, just kind of give me a layperson's explanation of what I'm able to do.
When you're ESL certified, you do not have to be bilingual.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
So when I take those additional ESL classes, it would be above and beyond my BA degree,
Yep.
my teaching degree, and it would be credits in ESL strategies and methodology, also in linguistics. So you have a finer focus on how to implement ESL strategies in the classroom. So you can be an ESL teacher and also obviously teach
Whatever your content
language.
is. Yeah. Roughly, what's the program hours for it? I know it depends on maybe the school, but I'm
I
just,
believe 24 credits.
okay, so it probably is largely, I would think largely a linguistics things from a standpoint of, I guess how you would present a lesson, trying to,
It depends on the WIDA level of the child.
okay,
So there's different levels. WIDA 1 is when I don't know hardly any, I'm just beginning, entry level. WIDA 2 is I can begin to speak in short sentences. As I go up the WIDA levels, I can speak and write in English in more complex sentences. And so we test students on the WIDA, which is their English language proficiency, plus they also take the MAP. And once you've been in this country 1 school year, you also take the M-STEP.
So did I understand you to say that you're going to be meeting with Burton, Cedar Salvez, and Westwood today?
No, after the,
No,
right after the break.
After the break?
Yes,
Okay.
we have those meetings scheduled.
Okay.
Questions? Do you have the opportunity to differentiate whether there's specific subcultures of language learners that are struggling more than others, and whether teachers are able to get specific training on, transitioning from those languages and those cultures into English and academic culture?
We have, to answer your question, we have professional development that we offer for teachers in the WIDA, which helps them to analyze the WIDA levels so that they can differentiate their lessons according to WIDA levels. And also, we have professional development on cultural differences. Specifically, we have a gentleman who's doing parent and staff professional development around the African nations, the culture of the African nations, because we're getting an influx of refugees from Africa. So does that answer your question?
A little bit. I guess I was wondering whether there's an opportunity to recognize that there's some kind of consistency over the students that are struggling more with particular subcultures, and in that way zero in on those languages and those barriers. Like, for instance, if we see that the children from the Congo are struggling more than the children from Mexico, that then we focus in on that language there and recognize that, there's some specific cultural and language barriers that could be pinpointed and addressed with pinpointed.
We have been working specifically with schools that are cultural centers that are getting more of the Congolese students because the cultural differences are many. And so we have a good partnership with Bethany and also the West Michigan Refugee Center. They've come on board with us, and they are having professional developments at buildings that are individualized to the needs of the building staff. So, for example, a couple days ago, there was a after-school professional development at Brookside, where Aaron from West Michigan Refugee Center did a presentation on the cultural differences and how to help students and their parents. So
Is that for the Brookside students?
yes. So different cultural centers have a different cultural profile depending upon where those refugees are coming from. The refugees, just like I was an immigrant from Cuba, we tend to settle where we have friends and family in the area.
Part of it, I know that some of the immigrants, or immigrants from Guatemala, or some of them from Central Africa, may come from parents, mothers especially, that have no literacy whatsoever, and they may speak an indigenous language that's not written. And so I'm just wondering if we're disaggregating these kids according to some of those specific. So you're doing all the support, which is great, which is awesome, but I'm also wondering whether they're doing front-end analysis with the WIDA and with the learning in terms of specifying with particular languages.
We do know if you come from prior schooling, we know that, and the teacher can tailor the instruction to that. It's different when you come from a country and you've been schooled versus when you've been in refugee camps and the schooling is very limited or interrupted, and it's not your fault. It's just a circumstance of life.
This is mainly curiosity. I'm even wondering how much professional development is out there to specifically look at those languages, and, you know what I mean? Unless you're familiar with that indigenous language from Guatemala or from Rwanda and also know English, it might be very challenging to know how to scaffold that child to English language learning. This is just pure curiosity.
Which
for me
brings
at
us
this
to
point.
another point, and if you know of anybody, we're constantly looking for tutors that have that language that can help us out. We would love to be able to hire teachers that know that are bilingual, that know those languages. Teachers and parapros. So send them our way, because we're constantly looking for individuals that know those other languages. Arabic, Swahili, Kinyarwanda. We need more of those languages in our school system.
It just seems to me that, from what I'm hearing of the questions that we're asking is, so principals and teachers pretty much know who's going into their classroom by the time
Yes.
September starts. They're going to know, I have a class of 35 kids, and out of those 35, 15 of them speak Spanish, a certain amount speak another language, and so forth. And so I'm wondering how we're preparing to meet that need, whether it's through tutoring that we're doing that, or it's peer-to-peer, so you're peering them with others in the classroom. Whether you have parent volunteers, I don't know. I'm not hearing some of that. I'm hearing a lot of the professional development pieces that you're doing that differentiate learning, but in terms of whether that student is actually getting the knowledge that they need in order to perform in that class, whatever that is, English or whatever. Is that what we're doing?
Reverend Matias, we have not only ESL certified teachers, we also have tutors in the schools.
But not all of our ESL teachers are bilingual. So the teacher might be teaching, but if they can't communicate in that language, maybe I'm wrong, right? If they're not communicating to them in their language, then they're not communicating with them.
But I also have stated that we have tutors of their language.
Okay.
Depending upon the language profile of the building, we have tutors, and we continue to have openings for tutors. So what I'm saying directly to all of you is, we have tutors in Kinyarwanda and Arabic and Swahili, but we are in dire straits to have more.
But we need more, okay.
So if you are out there, I know that you're out there in the community, please, give them my number. I'm happy to talk to them. I'm happy to help them through the process, but we need more. And actually, we need more teachers of that language too. There's many professionals that have come from Africa that we need to let into our system and make it easy for them to get their teaching credential.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's not our, we don't give out certifications as a school district, but we need to help them through our system.
Sure, we could leverage with institutions to make that happen.
Because
I would imagine.
we're going to continue to have second language learners. As the world politics changes or not, we will continue to have immigrants and refugees. And we will continue as a school district to partner with the refugee agencies to be able to help educate our children.
And that also includes the parents as well.
And the parents, that's part of our job. So we have,
Great family literacy programs from the Literacy Center.
yes, we do, and we have professional
That program's killing me. $30,000 in childcare I'm raising.
We have the Literacy Center. We also have, from the ELL department, we have Maybank, Mr. Maybank, that comes, and he's been helping us with parent meetings, talking to parents about the differences in America and in their culture, helping them learn about education in America and how we can help them and they can help us.
Couple more questions, please.
Go ahead, Don. You're on a roll.
I've just, a little advertisement here, recognizing how difficult it was for a number of the Guatemalan parents to learn English. We were piloting a pre-literacy class in Spanish this year. So we're teaching parents
wonderful.
ABCs in Spanish, since they speak Spanish, but don't, they
Using
speak
their
an
prior
indigenous
language.
language at home, so yeah, right.
It's wonderful.
I was just really pleased to see the really, what I'm assuming is a strong trajectory towards a smaller ratio from the number of trained teachers and learners from 70 back when this started to 37 now. Is that pretty much continued to reduce, or has that gone up and down?
We made rapid progress from the mid-1990s, and it's been getting harder and harder to do because, as Ms. Pitts will share with you,
Can't find the teachers.
it's very tough to find teachers.
Yeah.
We're competing with school districts across the country to identify teachers who have those credentials and experiences.
I know Aquinas is opening a new
There's
program.
a glimmer
aren't
of hope through Aquinas. We're in cohort 1.
they? Uh-huh.
Classes start in March. Cohort 1 is in collaboration with Wyoming and Kentwood. We each get 10 teachers, so we are looking for 10 teachers that are in our district right now that would sign on to get their ESL certification in 2 years. Everything is free, the coursework, the books, everything. So if you know of anyone, soon we'll be having an informational meeting at the beginning of January. We haven't set that date yet, but we're working on it.
Couple more questions. If I'm reading this right, that the students, the scores were better in reading at the non-cultural centers than the cultural centers?
Slightly.
Is there some assessment on why that is? Was it just random, depending on the students, or?
I don't know if I can pin it to any particular thing. Those kids, or those students obviously are not as needy as they are at cultural centers. They have higher levels of English proficiency
Okay, yeah.
to begin with, so that might be the reason for it.
Their WIDA scores may be higher.
Yeah.
So they're better readers.
Going into it, yeah. And one other question, and this is regarding long-term English language learners. So those students that we have exited out of the program, when I'm looking at the M-STEP, it's so heavy on academic language. I'm just wondering if we're looking at those that have exited but are still longer-term English language learners, whether they need additional support on the M-STEP for that academic language, or?
Those students that have been exited, we used to monitor them for 2 years. Now we monitor them for 4 years after they leave the program. So for help, or if they need to come back into the program, we will have them come back into the program.
It's been very rare that we've had to do that, though. So in our 2-year monitoring, I think I indicated that in the report, there are very, very few students, if any, over the last 2 years who have required being placed back in the program. Once they exit, because it's a very high bar to exit,
Yeah.
once they've exited, they tend to continue to do well in the classroom and on state and local assessments.
So you're able to keep up with those students who have exited?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, looking at your report, you've exited in August of 2016.
Yeah, so we will monitor those students for next 4 years. That's part of the new ESSA legislation. We're now required to monitor them for 4 years.
Okay. That's some monitoring. Yeah, that's a lot of work. Good. Any questions, Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I was just at those WIDA data points, the 34% who sort of stayed in the, where they were. I guess I'm just wondering from a moving the needle standpoint, sometime moving that middle group, is I guess where the low-hanging fruit is, so to speak. So I guess I'm just wondering philosophically, we had 17% who had regressed according to that WIDA data, and 34% who remained on, at the same sort of level. I guess two things, and I'm wondering if anything stands out about that 17%, any commonalities, or, and with that 34%, anything when we're talking about sort of moving that middle group to add to that 49, just what your thoughts are around those couple of points.
A couple things I'll mention about that. One is that we know from research that students at those early grade levels make the most rapid progress in improving their English level abilities. And so my guess is that I have to look at it, but I think data would bear that out, that most of the students who are either staying the same or maybe have regressed slightly are those students who are in the upper grades, who maybe came to us in 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. It's very difficult for those students to improve their English language ability just statistically, just the way the mind works. So I'm guessing most of them are in that category. Now remember that what we're reporting here are WIDA levels, and there are 6 different levels. Within those levels, you've got scale scores. So it's very possible that a student may have scored at level 5, but just barely into the level 5. Then they're tested the next year, and they're just barely lower than that. Now they're at a high level 4. So although they've gone down a level, in other words, they have regressed, it may not be a significant loss, just statistically, maybe just a very slight loss. And my guess is that those are probably students in those middle to upper grade levels.
Yes, I'm also, excuse me. Go ahead. I'll come
No,
wait.
go ahead.
I was also, and I have no data or anything to support this, but I'm wondering if, absenteeism, out of school suspension, some of those other sort of things that we obviously know impact academic growth. Wondering how much that may be prevalent in either one of these data points, and just I guess trying to connect the dots from all the things we do as a district and trying to fill in some of the holes, and just I guess maybe you and I could talk offline. I guess I'd like to maybe see a little bit more in particular about that, what's really within that 17% and that 34%, and just
We can
kinda look
dive
at it.
deeper.
Yeah,
We can do that.
so maybe I'll just follow up with you by email if that's all right with you.
Sure.
You may have answered this already, and I probably just didn't hear it. Each of the elementary schools use a different description of services. Some will use the ESL, and some will use the bilingual traditional. Why is that at each school?
The ESL is the more universal one, the one that I can be the ESL teacher to many different languages. So the centers that have ESL predominantly are the ones that have different languages other than Spanish.
Okay.
The transitional bilingual program are the 4 centers, well, the 3 centers plus the dual language immersion center that has predominantly Spanish speakers. And we use that language, their first language, which is Spanish, to help them learn skills in their language and then transition into English. We always use ESL as part of their school day, but we do it in a transitional, we transition them from Spanish to English. And of course, in the dual immersion, that's a different model. We start students 90 Spanish in kindergarten and 10 English, and by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're 50-50.
Okay.
I just have a question about funding. How have the title funds,
We have Title III funds, which over the years, since I've been in this role, have diminished. I mean, we still get it, but not as large. We also have what they call immigrant funding, which helps a little bit. That's in addition to title. And then we have a Section 41 for the 4 schools that are transitional and dual language immersion.
Is that state funding?
That's from the feds, yeah.
Do we get any specific allocations from the state to support English language learners?
Yeah, Title III, I mean,
That's through the
It's
state.
funneled through the state.
it's funneled through the state.
Yeah,
All
right.
those are funneled through the state.
Yeah. Maybe that's a Larry O question. I think as sitting on the board, it would be really helpful for me to get a sense of how that proportional to the number of students we have has changed over time. I think from a advocacy and a fiduciary perspective, it'd be good to know that. That's a question, that's the kind of question I'd get asked, you know.
Sure, we
in
can
terms-
certainly-
It's a question I can have in conversation with like board members of mine and stuff, so they recognize
Right.
that we're, these newcomers are assets to our community, but if we don't support them, it's difficult.
And we, they don't just come on in September. We get new students all the time.
Yeah, that's the other thing, yeah.
in thinking about that with our refugee population, and you probably answered it already, I'm assuming we partner with community organizations to support possible trauma in the home or family if these,
We do. We partner with West Michigan Refugee Center in Bethany, and we're in communication with them all the time to know how to help students. We also are in communication. We sponsored, in partnership with them, we had a couple days in August where they transported the students and their families, and we were able to enroll them and give them the WIDA test. And then we had also immunizations there that day. We're planning to do that in the new year, maybe do that twice a month, so that we can get the families in an atmosphere that's more kind of sheltered, more, a better atmosphere.
not as threatening, yeah.
Not as threatening.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Should I send Larry that question? I really would like to know that.
I will let him know that
Okay.
you would want to talk to him about that.
Okay.
Reverend Matias.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
I'd like to thank both of you for this report. I really appreciate you guys for what you do. And I think that, sure, go right ahead.
Sorry. This is this comes from my work. When you have families, like I'm thinking of Spanish-speaking families, but they aren't literate in Spanish, but, other families who have no written literacy, how do we communicate with those families? Like, for instance, for this pre-literacy class that I'm doing, we're on, Marty's on Spanish radio, right? Because you can't send written communication. So how are we as a district communicating with these parents who have no written skills?
We have a program that we use, I think it's through Voices for Health. It's called Interpretalk.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much, I can talk to you afterward.
Yeah, okay.
It's pretty much a service where you dial a number and they have interpreters right there on the spot.
Yeah.
And you can communicate with the parent or the child, and we use that all the time.
It's got to be challenging.
It is very challenging, but we still, that's the population that we serve.
Right.
So we have to work hard and find ways to communicate.
Thanks.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I told Mrs. Evans that I wanted to make a brief comment to each and every one that is here. This is my last academic achievement meeting, and as being chair. And I just want to thank the Grand Rapids Public School System for all the work that you do, and has opened my eyes to a lot of things that I was not aware of as to the insight of all the work that takes place. I know that the district still has a lot of things that it needs to do in terms of still seeking out teachers, and I'm hoping that in the future we will be able to get those teachers that we need on all levels to continue to educate our children. But for me, it's been an exciting adventure to be on this board. I've gained a lot. I'm reaching some new heights, and I feel that although I may not be a part of the board, but I'm still a part of Grand Rapids Community College. I don't know why I'm saying that. I'm still on the Community College Foundation Board, but that's another story. But Grand Rapids Public School System is a thriving school district. It is too big to fail, and I think that we're in a place right now where I think some good things are going to happen for us in the future. I just want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this board. I want to thank you for allowing me to be the academic chair, and for my colleagues, I'm not going to miss you because I'm going to see you often. And I appreciate each and every one of you for the work that you do professionally and for being a part of this board. So thank you, Mrs. Evans. I really appreciate your kindness in working with you and all of you. And Dr. Gunther, we still got to have a conversation about our book.
Pastor Moody, in closing, I'm glad you said that we will remain in contact because your leadership has been very instrumental to our growth. We believe we have a great board, and the work that you have done around the Achievement Committee can be commended. We thank you for your patience and your persistence in pushing us and insisting upon us reflecting upon our strategies. We appreciate the time that you have committed to the district, but we're sure that we'll see you in the future, and we'll look forward to that.
Thank you. Have a happy holiday, everyone.